This is an exclusive excerpt from the Stuph File Program with Peter Anthony Holder.
Astronaut Terry Virts has been in space twice, a 2-week mission on the Space Shuttle Endeavour back in 2010, and a 200-day stay on the International Space Station in 2014 and 2015. He's also the author of the National Geographic book View from Above, which combines some of his best photographs from space with stories that share the experience of spaceflight. Terry joins us via Skype from Texas. Hi, Terry.
Hello. Good to be there. Bonjour.
Thanks for being on the program with us, and it's a pleasure to have a chance to talk to you. Now, as I mentioned, you were on 2 missions. One was a space shuttle mission. One was on the space station. When you went to the space station, it was after the time that the space shuttle missions were ended. So what was it like? What was the difference for you traveling on a space shuttle and traveling on a Russian rocket?
So that's a great question. The overall experience of going through training and then having this mapped out launch countdown and then leaving the planet, that was similar, but the rocket itself was different because the shuttle was more like a big muscle car. The engines made this huge roar during first stage. When the solid rockets are running, there's this vibration that's the biggest I've ever felt. It's like somebody grabbing you and shaking you as hard as they can. It was just such a massive beast, 4 million pounds, almost 2 million kilograms. The Soyuz, on the other hand, is an ICBM, so that's more like a sports car. When that rocket lights, you are gone. It is bang, and you smash back in your seat. When staging happens, when the first stage engine shuts off, then the second stage one, it is a huge bang. You're thrown forward in your seat, and then a couple seconds later, another bang, and you're thrown back in your seat, kind of like a Hollywood movie. So the big picture is the same, but the experience of riding the rocket was very different.
And also comparing the two, wouldn't the space shuttle, from the capsule perspective of it, be a little more spacious than the Soyuz capsule?
That is a very good point. Now, in both of them, you're in this really uncomfortable, bulky, cramped spacesuit, but the shuttle is, like an airliner cockpit. There's room. The Soyuz is like a public, telephone booth or something. You're just crammed in there. You can't extend your legs because the spaceship's not that big. You have to have your knees up in your chest. So yeah, to say it's more cramped is an understatement for sure.
Now, your National Geographic book, A View from Above, which, as I said, combines some of the best photographs from space with stories that share the experience of spaceflight. Was this something that you had planned on doing before you went up into space? Or was this something that while you were there, or when you came back, you'd say, maybe there's a book here?
No, I was planning on taking photographs. I'm a photographer. I always have been since I was a kid, and that was something I really wanted to do. I did a lot of social media on my Astronaut Terry Twitter and Instagram accounts. But when I decided to leave NASA about a year after I got back from my flight, one of the things I wanted to do right away was write a book, just to share the experience. I didn't want to write a memoir. There's a million astronaut memoirs. That story has been told 100 times. I really wanted to share what it's like in space. So it's not an atlas of, here's Canada and here's the Sahara and here's Australia. It's not that at all. It's like, what does it feel like to launch? What does it feel like to do a spacewalk? What does it feel like to see the planet and all the colors and beauty? It is what is it like in book format?
When you take pictures up in space, I can understand how it works when you're in the shuttle, or maybe I don't know how it works when you're in the shuttle or the space station. But you took some pictures while also spacewalking. Physically, how did you do that? What kind of camera were you using? How did you release the shutter? How does that physically work in space?
Right. So one of the most awesome things about being a photographer, when you're in space, you have every kind of camera. We've had Nikon, Canon, Red, everything. But on the spacewalk itself, we had a Nikon D2, which was an older Nikon digital professional camera. So when you see the reporters taking pictures of the president or whatever, that's one of the kind of cameras they're holding up. Now they're up to the D5, so it's just a more modern version of the same big, kind of bulky camera. And we have a shield that goes around it. It's made out of this kind of like a blanket material, metallic blanket, and it keeps it from getting too hot, too cold. There's a big, giant shutter button because the gloves that you have are like snow mittens. I mean, they're not comfortable. They're very difficult. There's no dexterity. So you can kind of wrap your hand around it and sort of find the shutter button and push. And when you push, there's a big green light on the back that tells you that you actually took a picture, because otherwise there's no feedback. You can't hold the camera up to your eye because there's a helmet visor that's 10 centimeters from your eyeball, so you can't put the camera right up to your eye. But that's how it works. And the big problem with the camera is, what do you do with it? Some people leave it in the cargo bag, so they have to like go over kind of to their suitcase and pull the camera out every time they want a picture. But if you do that, then you don't ever take any pictures. So I took my camera and I kind of wedged it in my chest pack, which worked. It wasn't great, but the biggest problem with taking pictures on a spacewalk was time. I felt super, super, super busy. Like I've never been on the clock as much as I was on my spacewalk. So while I took over 300,000 pictures during my mission, on each of my spacewalks, I only took maybe 10 or 15 still images because I just didn't have time. I would love to go to a spacewalk to just take pictures, but that wasn't the mission, and I just didn't have any time to take the shots.
As someone who spent 213 days and 10 hours on the space station, the idea of being up there and just seeing all that there is to see, how long did it take before you could, literally close your mouth and not go, wow? Like, did it ever become routine, what you were seeing out the window?
That is so hard, especially for a first-time flyer, especially that first few hours, because you look out the window and there's not a word. I mean, you'll say wow just because your brain forces a word to come out. There's no words to describe it. So I always tell people, you can't imagine how beautiful it is, but you actually can't. I had spent my whole life looking at astronaut photography, but until I saw the Earth for the first time, it was just this amazing thing. So for me, my entire space mission was this contrast of amazing, sublime thoughts and views and experiences with 99% completely mundane, just doing work, being a mechanic, putting the food away when you open a new food bag, just doing whatever mundane tasks you have to do, punctuated on a semi-regular basis with this, wow, I can't believe what I'm seeing. For me, it never got old. I think for some folks, they're just happy to be there. They want to get their work done. They're more focused on the work. But for me, I was more focused on the planet and the universe. And of course, I got all my work done and think that aspect of our mission went really well. But I also really appreciated the view that I was getting and knew that there's nothing like it.
With all your training, both for the Space Shuttle Endeavour flight that you took and also for your training to be on the space station, you got to prepare for everything. You obviously talked to previous astronauts about their experiences, but even with all that knowledge, what is something that you were not prepared for or you were really wowed by going into space?
I think the view I had seen, like I was talking about, I had seen other astronauts' photography books. I'd seen pictures from space. I had talked to astronauts. I was in the office for almost 10 years before I first flew. So I kind of thought I knew what I was getting into. But as we launched at nighttime, I saw America, the East Coast, actually up to Montreal at night. That was amazing. There were so many. My whole chapter 1 is about all these crazy things that happened during launch. But when we finally flew into the sunrise over the North Atlantic, a few minutes after the engine shut down, it was just so overwhelming. I thought, I just can't imagine that. I just wanted to sit there and stare at it. And then I had to, no, wait, I'm flying the space shuttle and we have to turn the hydraulic pumps off and we have to do all these things that were really important. And I guess I hadn't thought of the level of distraction that Earth would be. Luckily, I was able, everybody's highly trained and we're able to overcome that. But it really is, distracting.
213 days in space. What was it like trying to acclimatize to Earth, its orbit, its gravity, when you came back home?
Yeah, that's a great question. The first mission, I think everybody feels dizzy when they get back. The first mission, I felt very heavy. I mean, I thought everything just felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. But my second mission, it was over 200 days, and that was really a dizzy-centric mission. The first day, I was able to walk. NASA makes you do this balance test where you close your eyes and go one foot in front of the other. I was able to
sort of like a sobriety test almost.
It was a sobriety test, exactly. And I was able to lay on my stomach and stand up as fast as I could, walk around, by myself. But man, I wanted a handrail nearby or somebody with me just in case. I felt just really overpoweringly dizzy, but I recovered really, really quickly. In fact, they had never seen this before. A week after landing, I went and did the official balance test. You stand in this big box. It's like a small room, and it moves around, and they measure your feet and the force that your feet are putting down, and if you're wobbly, your feet are really back and forth and forward and backward, and lots of force changes. And if your balance is good, your feet are very steady. And so my balance score on this test a week after landing was better than what it had been before launch. And that was crazy. I couldn't believe it, but they had never seen that before. So for whatever reason, my body really adapts very well. And I guess I'm just blessed and lucky that way.
Was there much of a weight loss when you returned, or conversely a weight gain after returning?
I joke, the going into space is like most weight loss programs. You lose all of your weight, but like most programs, you gain it all back. I probably lost 1 kilogram a month, maybe a little more than that. Everybody loses weight in space. There's just some muscle that goes away that you don't ever use, and so you lose that. You also don't have McDonald's or eat out restaurants, or the NASA food is pretty good. It's pretty varied, but it's also healthy. There's not fried American junk food. So and you exercise 2.5 hours a day. So a combination of losing muscle through just not using them and eating healthy and exercising, I lost 5 or maybe 7 or 8 kilos. But it was a good weight loss. Like, I came back really in shape. It was kind of like going to a health spa for 7 months.
Well, I'm sure McDonald's is planning a drive-through in space somewhere. The book the book is called View from Above. Who did you want to focus this book on? Who did you see your audience as being?
I did not have a target demographic of 18 to 25-year-old boys or 45 to 55-year-old women, or I didn't have any kind of focus group. I wanted to take my spaceflight experience, what I saw, what I felt, what I did, what it's like to go from launch to landing and live, not just do a mission in outer space, but actually like move to outer space and live there. What is it like in space for everybody? I mean, kids are interested in it, adults are interested in it, Americans, Europeans, Chinese. I've had a chance to go to China 5 times last year. They are fascinated by space. The little kids come dressed up in their little astronaut outfits, just like they do when I go to Canada or when I do go to America. It's a universal human interest in what's it like in space. And that was the question I tried to answer. And it's not just for one group, it's for everybody.
Again, the book is called View from Above. It's written by Terry Virts, which also includes many of his pictures. It's a National Geographic book. Terry, I thank you very much for being on the program with us.
Great to be there, and can't wait to come back to Canada in person one of these days.
Astronaut Terry Virts, who is the author of the National Geographic book View from Above. You can go to my website at thestuffile.com to the page for this show, which is show number 0495, and you'll find links to Terry's site, plus links to either Amazon.com or Amazon.ca, where you can order his book directly. He was such a fun guest to talk to, and Patreon subscribers to the Stuph File program, you can hear more of Terry as a Patreon reward extra. Just go to our Patreon page, and if you're not already a member, become one of the select patrons of the show. Visit patreon.com/the Stuph File program.
You've just heard an exclusive excerpt from the Stuph File program with Peter Anthony Holder. To hear any or all of the full hour-long shows, visit thestufffile.com. Stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H. That's thestufffile.com. A presentation of Flying Fish Communications.